Brace yourself for an astonishing revelation. I'm talking about an extraordinary chapter in our history that has remained shrouded in secrecy and controversy. What you're about to discover is not just a story, it's the shocking and undeniable truth. The Montauk Project was a covert operation hidden deep underground beneath the small hamlet of Montauk, New York. Prepare to be freaked the fuck out. We're gonna dive into the unbelievable world of the Montauk Project. The Montauk Project isn't just significant, it's a pivotal movement in human history. It's a true testament to the depths of our government's power and the unimaginable experiments that transpired beneath the surface. We're going to explore the untold history, the extraordinary claims, and the mind-bending controversies that engulf the Montauk Project. My mission is to unveil the irrefutable facts, to expose the hidden realities, and to reveal the astonishing secrets that lie below the ground. Get ready for a revelation like no other as I uncover the incredible events that transpired during the Montauk Project. This report will completely fuck your understanding of reality. Buckle up. This is going to be one hell of a ride. The origin of the Montauk Project started during World War II with the Philadelphia experiment. In case you don't know what that was, I'll give you a brief rundown on it. During World War II, Nazi U-boats were sinking a lot of U.S. ships trying to get our supplies over to our allies in Europe. The U.S. was desperate and was looking for a way to fool the Nazis' radar using electromagnetic waves. According to multiple witnesses of the incident, the military successfully developed a technique that rendered the USS Eldridge, stationed at the Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia, not only invisible to radar, but completely invisible to the naked eye, like a cloaking device. What's even more impressive, the ship was transported through a hole in space-time to Norfolk, Virginia, more than 200 miles away, and it arrived 10 minutes before it left. Several minutes later, it reappeared in the Philadelphia shipyard. However, it wasn't just a harmless trip. When it returned, some of the crew members had been fused into the bulkheads of the ship or had rematerialized inside out. Others were driven insane by the disorientation they had experienced while the ship was in the hyperspace bubble that existed outside of space-time. 2 members of the crew went missing. Their names were Edward Cameron and his brother Duncan Cameron. Except they weren't really missing. They were both sent 40 years into the future. In 1988, a man named Bielek saw the movie The Philadelphia Experiment. I've seen it. It was meh. After watching it, he experienced an overwhelming sense of deja vu. Using New Age therapies and practices, Bielek was able to unlock a massive amount of repressed memories about his broad involvement, not just in the Philadelphia experiment, but also in something called the Montauk Project as well, and that the 2 programs were intertwined. Through regressive hypnosis, he was able to uncover that the CIA used MK Ultra style techniques to erase his memory of the 2 top secret programs he was participating in. They made him eat the brown acid. On top of that, he discovered that his real name was Edward Cameron, one of the 2 brothers that went missing during the Philadelphia experiment. Bielek told his story in 1990, saying not only that the Philadelphia experiment was real, but that he and his brother were aboard the ship when it happened. He said that none other than Nikola Tesla himself had engineered the equipment, what is now known as Tesla coils, that caused the Eldridge to break out of space-time, and that it had even opened up a wormhole to the future. When the ship arrived in Virginia, the 2 brothers got scared and jumped off the ship, thinking they would just hit the water. However, when they landed, they ended up dropping into the middle of Montauk's Camp Hero, 40 years in the future on August 12, 1983. The military quickly sent them back through the wormhole with a mission: destroy the equipment on the Eldridge. According to Bielek, the brothers completed their mission, though that didn't stop the government from doing more experiments on creating portals into the future. Of course not. Preston Nichols, an electrical engineer, started noticing strange things while he was at work. People he didn't know started to recognize him and said hi to him in the halls. He was copied on mail and invited to meetings that didn't apply to his position in the company. One day, while Nichols was sitting at his desk, he felt a pain in his hand. He looked at his hand, and on the back of it, he saw a Band-Aid covering a fresh wound. A wound he didn't have 15 minutes ago. Man, that shit happens to me all the time. Except mine's because I'm just a clumsy ass. This had happened several times before. Confused and frustrated, Nichols asked the company nurse if he had been in there for a Band-Aid. She said that he hadn't and had no idea what he was talking about. As time went on, Preston Nichols began to realize that he was living 2 different lives. One day, he had what he called an intuitive urge to visit the basement of the building where he worked. This was a high security area. Only 10 people at the company had the clearance to be there, and he wasn't one of them. He tentatively took the elevator down. He took a relaxed posture to look natural and boldly walked right up to the security guard. "Sup?" Even though he had never been in this area and had no idea what went on here, the guard gave him a badge with his name on it and motioned him on through. "Take her easy, hoss." He wasn't sure if it was muscle memory or a hunch, but Nichols seemed to know where he was going. He arrived at a lavish office, way better than the one he had. On the desk, he saw a nameplate. It read Preston B. Nichols, Assistant Project Director. Nichols now had real proof he was living a double life. One as an engineer, the other as a senior member of a top secret government program called the Montauk Project. By the beginning of 1990, Nichols had recalled all the memories of the project, and it was way, way worse than he had suspected. This gets a little convoluted, but stick with me. In the early 1960s, Al Bielek, who was at that time Edward Cameron, convinced his father to have another child so they could put Duncan's consciousness from 1983 into the sibling born in 1963, similar to someone having an old soul. His father reluctantly agreed and the procedure was successful. I'm guessing his mother was okay with it too? Duncan Cameron, the child version born in 1963, was later found to have incredible psychic powers and became the focus of many of the Montauk Project experiments. By 1990, Duncan Cameron had gained full recollection of the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project, and it was horrifying. Before the Montauk Project even started, experiments were already underway. The first big test was using the pulses coming from the huge radar dish at the base to control people's emotions. The scientists found that by changing the rate and the width of the pulse in the 410 to 430 megahertz range, they could alter the way people felt. They experimented with making people laugh, cry, get angry, and get sleepy. Like those videos that say, "Go to sleep in 5 minutes." In 1973, the researchers upped the ante to testing whether or not they could control the thoughts of large groups of people at once. They initially experimented on soldiers staying at the base for R&R, before moving on to civilians in Long Island, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. There's no record of what happened to the citizens, but this wouldn't be the first time that the U.S. government performed tests on civilians without their consent and with no documentation. Aside from the radar dish, one of the most important pieces of tech in the Montauk Project was the Montauk chair. It was a large chair covered in coils and sensors connected to a Cray supercomputer. It was an interface device that was used to tremendously amplify a test subject's psychic energy in order to help them perform unbelievable supernatural abilities. No one recalls where the chair's technology came from, although it's most likely that most of the chair's parts came from extraterrestrial technology. That's why no one recalls it. Getting the chair up and running was just the beginning. To be able to use it, the subject had to be able to withstand huge amounts of electromagnetic energy to survive the Montauk chair. In the 1940s, a man named Jose Silva, the creator of the Silva mind control method, was conducting voluntary psychological tests on subjects supposedly to better their IQ. Hey, I used to have that book. It didn't help my IQ. But Silva theorized that it might also bring out a child's psychic abilities. One of his participants was Duncan Cameron. After some very promising results in regards to Silva's theory, Cameron was abducted by the Men in Black several times. In a stroke of luck, crazy coincidence, or by design, Duncan Cameron was found to be so psychically powerful that he was not only able to handle the power coming from the chair, his psychic powers were strong enough for him to manipulate its power. The first experiment Duncan focused on is what is known as the CNI. If Duncan held a lock of someone's hair or a personal object, he could see through that person's eyes, hear through their ears, and feel whatever that person felt. This worked with anyone, anywhere in the world. So like remote viewing, only in 4D. Being the most accomplished member of the Montauk Project's team of psychic researchers, Duncan Cameron began to work on creating solid objects via telekinesis, thanks to the boost in psychic energy he got from the Montauk chair. This was later called spontaneous object creation. Duncan would visualize an object in his head, a watch, a gun, a dildo, anything. He even successfully did this with a building. At first, the visualization would appear on a computer monitor in the lab, then as a holograph. Then it would physically manifest in real life. According to researchers from the Montauk Project, depending on the amount of power Cameron drew from the chair, he could create any permanent object, limited only by his imagination. However, if he got a weak signal, the items would remain ethereal and fade as soon as the chair's power was turned off. This paranormal breakthrough would lead researchers of the Montauk Project to the main reason for the experiment. Using a large antenna and several transmitters, they created a vortex someone could step into and be transported to a different point in time. In effect, a time portal. Nichols tried to harness Duncan Cameron's powers in the Montauk chair to conduct mind control experiments using special radio dishes at Camp Hero. This is where it gets a little dark. Nichols said there were other subjects involved in the experiment, all boys between 10 and 16 years old. He called them the Montauk Boys. Since Nichols and Bielek started speaking publicly about their newfound memories, other Long Island men have recovered memories that they were frequently abducted from their homes by Camp Hero scientists. The scientists wanted to break them psychologically by bringing them to the brink of death and then saving them. They would tell them, "I saved you. Remember that." This person would become their handler. It made the child more likely to listen and obey his handler. The ultimate objective was for the scientists to implant subconscious commands into their subjects, and they would follow these commands even if they normally wouldn't. Like destroying something, assassination, or even self-sacrifice if that's what was necessary. Man, that's fucking twisted. Some were abducted from their middle-class homes, while others were homeless or runaways taken off the streets. Joe Lafreno works at what is now Camp Hero State Park. He states that he was abducted as a boy and taken through one of the old gunnery tunnels to an underground lab where experiments were conducted on him. He said he wasn't sure about it until a few years ago when he was hypnotized by a therapist and the memories came flooding back. He remembers lying on a table, wires coming out of him like electrodes. He said, "They analyzed us like animals. There were up to 50 other kids there." He's absolutely sure some of them were later killed. Lafreno's statement is very believable because he had nothing to gain from it. he didn't benefit from it financially. As a matter of fact, he's been repeatedly ridiculed by many skeptics. Nevertheless, his story remained consistent. Another one of the Montauk Boys, Stuart Swerdlow, a man from Michigan, came forward in 2017 and said, "There were beatings, a lot of torture, electrical shocks, burials, and near drownings. Their aim was to fracture your mind so they could program you. They changed the temperature from very hot to very cold, starve you, and then overfeed you. And they loved to hold your head underwater until you nearly drowned." Swerdlow said he's clairvoyant, meaning he can see into the future. He can move his consciousness beyond time and space. He said he's visited Mars and even went back to biblical times using the project's portals. Swerdlow continued, "In the early days, as they were perfecting the coordinates, a lot of boys were simply lost. I have nightmares about it today. I wasn't there when the Montauk chair was shut off, but I felt it. Like I had suddenly been unplugged from electricity." Once researchers at Montauk discovered that they could travel through time tunnels to distant points in Earth's past and future, they turned their attention to traveling to Mars. Well, shit, why the hell not? By harnessing the time tunnels, researchers were able to teleport away teams to the Red Planet, but it wasn't as easy as they thought it would be. Preston Nichols stated that when they first got to Mars, they realized that there had been a civilization there at one time, and the above-ground part of it had crumbled into dust. But they did detect huge underground installations which were still making magnetic fields. What? They realized that there was still machinery running underground. The researchers wanted to verify it was true, but they couldn't figure out how to get down underground without bringing boring equipment and cutting a tunnel right down. That was taken care of by psychic all-star Duncan Cameron, who was able to open a portal inside one of Mars' pyramids near the Mars face that was large enough to fit entire away teams. The away teams described seeing what was referred to as a solar defense system that had to be disabled before any further tests could continue. Much of the film, Total Recall, is based on what was found by the Mars away teams. Awesome movie, by the way. A total brain fuck. After a decade of playing with psychic warfare, time travel, and interplanetary teleportation, things at the Montauk Project started going haywire. Back when the Cameron brothers jumped off the USS Eldridge in 1943 and landed on the shores of Montauk in 1983, they were quickly grabbed by guards and rushed down into the research facility. The Cameron brothers were introduced to the researchers, who explained that the invisible technology on the USS Eldridge was interfering with the technology in Montauk, and that they had to go back in time to shut it off. What happened is, the two experiments in time, exactly 40 years apart, had coupled to each other and created a hole in hyperspace which sucked the Eldridge in. While all of that was happening, a mutiny was brewing in present-day Montauk. Several members of the project, who had become increasingly uncomfortable with the aims and research objectives of the project and with the effect that warping time and space might have on the world around them, decided to bring the project to a crashing halt. A contingency plan had already been put into place in case things started going too far. While Duncan Cameron was sitting in the Montauk chair, someone walked up to him and whispered in his ear the code phrase, "The time is now." Duncan then used the Montauk chair to manifest a creature from his subconscious. In every report about Montauk, it's referred to as the Beast from Id, and it materialized as a large, hairy, extremely violent monster that smashed its way through the base, destroying and eating everything it could find. Sounds like a pissed off Bigfoot. It couldn't be stopped. Weapons were completely ineffective. In fact, that only pissed it off even more. Several researchers and some test subjects were killed. Meanwhile, one of the project members began cutting apart cables and conduits in an attempt to sever the power to the base transmitters and shut down the project. After smashing up and cutting apart enough equipment, the transmitter powered down and the beast mercifully dissipated from this plane of existence. The Montauk Project was effectively finished. The base was emptied of people and equipment, and all extraneous personnel were brainwashed into forgetting everything that had happened there. Almost a year later, in May or June of 1984, a unit of Black Berets entered the base with orders to shoot anything and everything that moved. They purged the base for a second team, which removed any equipment deemed too sensitive to abandon. One of the rooms cleared out contained hundreds of human skeletons. After that, the underground chambers were sealed off. Finally, at the end of 1984, cement was poured into the elevator shafts and underground areas of Montauk Base, sealing off all the areas used for the most extreme of the space-time experiments. Sounds like a cover-up to me. If you've seen the Netflix series Stranger Things, you can easily tell it was based on the Montauk Project. Hell, during the early development of the show, the original title for it was Montauk. The change was driven by several factors. The series was filmed in Atlanta, Georgia, which looks nothing like Montauk, New York. The title Stranger Things allowed them to explore a wider range of supernatural and science fiction themes without being tied to just the happenings during the Montauk Project. And the creators wanted to capture the essence of 1980s nostalgia without being tied to a specific location. However, the similarities between the two are uncanny. They both feature government experiments related to time travel, mind control, and interdimensional travel. Both of them explore telekinetic and psychic abilities as a result of government experiments. They both have characters who travel to different dimensions with their own dangers and creatures. Who do you think would win in a fight? The big hairy beast or the Demogorgon? Let me know in the comments. Finally, they both have children with psychic abilities. The similarities between Stranger Things and the Montauk Project are more thematic and conceptual rather than direct adaptations of specific events. While getting people to agree about what exactly happened in Montauk, Long Island between the years of 1971 and 1983 is nearly impossible, one thing that many folks agree on is that the underground base is still in operation, running a series of covert black ops programs. This belief stems from the fact that when Camp Heroes Deed was gifted to the state as a park, the paperwork noted that the state owned everything on the surface of the base, but that the government would retain ownership of everything below. Well, that's sketchy as hell. No one knows exactly what the government owns below the supposedly defunct base, but theories abound. It's possible that the government is using the area to store buried munitions or even old equipment that can't be used anymore. Or maybe they're secretly continuing the research that was unceremoniously brought to an end. The 90-foot tall concrete tower and its 40 feet wide steel dish are visible for miles, and although the base appears it's no longer active, that doesn't keep the dish from mysteriously changing positions. I've got something for you. A huge Demigorgon thank you for watching this far into my video. You are true champions, and I deeply appreciate it. So, the Montauk Project. Man, that is a buckload of crazy shit there. What do y'all think of the Montauk Project? Did that really happen? Can people really travel interdimensionally? Is it possible for someone to picture an object in their mind and make it appear in real life? Have we finally unlocked the secret of time travel? Let me know down in the comments. I read and respond to all of them. Unless you're being an asshole, then I just ignore you. And please, subscribe, like, and share this video. It helps me out so much. If you want to keep the weird shit going, click on the video that's going to pop up right here. Until next time, stay creepy!